You know what's funny? And you know what I really appreciate so far about this 2025 NHL offseason is that technically there isn't really anything to talk about, right? Technically. Nobody's getting signed, nobody's getting traded, nobody's on the move, or maybe they are, I don't know. I'm recording this audio on the night of Monday, July 7th. It'll be uploaded on YouTube publicly the morning of July 8th, so maybe there's a signing, we'll make a video about it when I wake up. But even though there is somewhat of a lack of intensity, there still are things that we can dive into, and things that I honestly think are intriguing enough to make videos about, where it's like, yeah, we can combine a lot of this information in a one video commentary. We can talk about the Canucks, we can talk about the Habs, we can talk about the Flyers, we can talk about Rick Tocchet. Let's dive into the Montreal Canadiens, and I wanted to make this video primarily a Canadiens video because all these stories, even though they do link to other teams, they primarily link back to Montreal. So let's dive into what I wanted to talk about in this video. I wanted to talk about two players, two centers around the NHL. Firstly, Nick Suzuki, captain of the Montreal Canadiens, current 25-year-old heading into the 25-26 season. He'll be 26 once the year begins because he was born August 10th, 1999. Nick Suzuki, 5'11", 207, right-handed guy, signed on to the end of 2030, making $7.875 million a year. We don't necessarily need to dive into the intricacies of what makes Suzuki Suzuki, but he has been very good as the captain of the Habs, as highlighted by his 89 points in 82 games played this most recent season. 30 goals, 59 assists, and 2 goals in 5 games in the playoffs. We can kind of ignore that for now. The guy was, if I might remind you here, a very good playoff producer when the Canadiens went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021. He had 16 points in 22 games played in that little stint there, and 2 goals in 5 games. While you can say, the guy didn't produce, what's up with that? Let's be real here. The fact that the Montreal Canadiens even made the playoffs in the first place, that's impressive, and it was very much carried by Nick Suzuki's productivity in the back half of the year. I mean, just look at this stint, for example. How many points is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 points in 7 games played. End of March, start of April, Nick Suzuki was a part of a really big Canadiens win streak wherein he was carrying the load offensively with a whole bunch of points and a whole bunch of top-tier moments. This is why, when we take a look at just some of the discourse that has surrounded Nick Suzuki the past few days here, I wanted to take a look at what Habs on Reddit posted about on Twitter. NHL.com has included Nick Suzuki in their projected Team Canada Olympic roster. Sammy Montembeault, however, isn't listed among the goalies. Now, you can debate whether or not the goalie conversation really is unfair, whether or not Montembeault is better than Binnington, Thompson, or Adin Hill, but at this point, just taking a look at Nick Suzuki's presence on the forwards for Canada, this is a story that I think Habs fans shall be more and more excited about as the Olympics draws closer. The forwards that are listed for Team Canada are Sam Bennett, Anthony Chiarelli, Sidney Crosby, Brandon Hagel, Nathan MacKinnon, Brad Marchand. They have Marchand making Team Canada over here. Mitch Marner, Connor Mack, Braden Point, Sam Reinhart, Mark Scheifele, Mark Stone, Nick Suzuki, Robert Thomas. Lots of forward depth, and honestly, a roster that I feel is pretty good offensively. You know, Bennett, Reinhart, you love to see these Florida Panthers going out there and doing their thing. Bennett, Reinhart, and Marchand, man. I mean, I get it. Marchand just had a crazy playoffs in 2025. Will he be able to carry that momentum into the 2026 Olympics? Who really knows? The reply section here goes out there and mostly talks about the goaltenders. TSN had Montembeault in a projected backup role, so it just shows you how close that second and third spot is. It would be great to see him make the team, though. That I will agree with, but for Nick Suzuki, I mean, There is a very legitimate argument that he belongs on this team. And this was exemplified even further by Canadiens Muse, who tweeted this out yesterday as well: most points per game after the Four Nations face-off. So from that point, post-tournament to the end of the season, these are the guys who led the NHL in points per game. Nick Suzuki had 37 points in 26 games, 15 goals, 22 assists, and a plus 16. He was one of the most productive players, and if you just do the math on that, 1.42 multiplied by 82, this was a 116-point pace that Nick Suzuki was scoring at, and 26 games is not a relatively insignificant sample size. I mean, 26 divided by 82, that's a third, no, not a third, yeah, it's around a third of the year. If Nick Suzuki can score at a 114-point pace for around a third of the season, then just imagine if he's able to get into that groove earlier on. Imagine how much he's able to carry that momentum if the Canadiens are good, if he's feeling good too, and if the rest of the Habs are inspired to start scoring more themselves. If Juraj Slafkovsky starts out the year looking really strong, and if he's going out there actually producing a lot, then Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, these guys are having all the benefits on playing on his line and increasing their production as well. Suzuki was only bested by Draisaitl, Kucherov, Pastrnak, Thomas, and McDavid after the Four Nations in regards to points per game. That's crazy. Now, let's talk about another player who had played center for the Montreal Canadiens this previous season, because I wanted to get a brief discussion going in there about Christian Dvorak, who is a current Philadelphia Flyer, 29 years old, who had signed a $5.4 million AAV deal for 1 year with the Philadelphia Flyers. Dvorak also had a really nice end to the season for Montreal. He had 33 points in 82 games played the entirety of the year, but there was a decent chunk of production that he had at the end of the season compared to the first half. The reason I wanted to talk about Dvorak here is because turns out my favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks, almost went out there and signed this guy. But before we dive into that, I wanted to do a little bit of a tease here. Let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens and how Cole Caulfield is still grieving after losing Christian Dvorak. He posted this on Instagram on his story. "It's been a fun time, Rust. Thanks for everything, fella. We will miss you." And included is a picture of him and Dvorak hugging it out in what looks to be practice. Caulfield even says here at the bottom, "Enjoy, Trevor Zegras." So, yeah, there's kind of a bromance here that has been broken up by Dvorak's departure from Montreal. But it turns out the fact that he had signed with Philadelphia was a pretty big deal for the Vancouver Canucks, as was talked about by Rick Dhaliwal on last week's edition of Halford and Bruff with Jamie Dodd. Let's dive into the scoop here from Rick Dhaliwal. The Vancouver Canucks were trying to recruit Christian Dvorak hard. He was former teammates with Connor Garland. Tocchet was his coach, however. And this was also expanded upon even more. After Mikael Granlund was off the market, Vancouver turned their attention to Dvorak, and the agent created a bidding war between the Canucks and Flyers. The Canucks offered 3 years, $4 million a year, and the Flyers offered 1 year, $5 million a year. The Canucks were not the only team to offer him term. So, Dvorak, instead of taking the security, he took the dollar amount. And going over to Philadelphia to play under his former head coach in Rick Tocchet, it does spell a little bit of an unfortunate outcome for the Vancouver Canucks, as they wanted this guy for their team. But, ultimately, as was also talked about by Rick Dhaliwal in this same radio hit, because Vancouver missed out on Christian Dvorak, they were able to sign Brock Boeser again. So, maybe it's a good thing that the Philadelphia Flyers offered the dollar amount that they did for Christian Dvorak, even though Cole Caulfield is kind of upset and sad to see his buddy leave, even though Vancouver wasn't able to get the guy that they wanted. They ended up getting the money freed up to circle back and sign Brock Boeser instead. So with all that in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about all these conversation points, Nick Suzuki's dominance to end off the year, and his potential inclusion on Team Canada at the Olympics, and what are your thoughts on Philadelphia beating out the Canucks in a bidding war for Christian Dvorak? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.